Is this the reason that we're all gonna stop eating ribeye steaks? Or is it a total bust that you can just straight out ignore? I guess we're gonna find out.
A big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
You might have already heard about the rib cap steak, otherwise known as the spinalese steak. This is a steak made out of a part of the ribeye, and it's supposed to be better than the actual ribeye itself. Is that true, or is it just a straight out lie? I want to find out for myself, and I'm taking you with me for the experience. This is what I bought. Now these are ribeye USA Black Angus prime steaks. And the reason that I bought this high quality steak is because the spinalese on top of this steak is a dream. You can compare these spinaleses to Australian Wagyu steaks. And I dare to make such a comparison because of the amount of intramuscular fat that sits inside of the spinaleses compared to the amount of intramuscular fat that sits inside of the Wagyu steaks. Let's get these two out of the package and take a closer look. Now you can clearly see that these ribeyes don't look alike very much. Of course, they're ribeyes. They're cut out of the same section of the cow, but every part of the ribeye is different and it develops, and it means that every part of the ribeye has a different amount of fat sitting around the eye, which is the center of the ribeye, and they have a different amount of, look at that right there, that is the connective tissue that holds the muscles together. Now you can clearly see that this one has a lot more of it than this steak. But at the same time, you can see that this steak is already falling apart. And now you understand that this ribeye steak is actually not one muscle. And then someone came along and decided that he could mess with it and create the spinalese steak. The part that sits on top here is called the spinalese. And that is what the rib cap steak is made of. Before I take these steaks apart, I want to point out one big advantage of creating the spinalese steak. And that's getting rid of that silver skin that runs in between the two muscles, and thereby removing the most tough elements of the ribeye steak that nobody enjoys. Let's take a knife and run it along the spinalese, separating it from the eye. And this spinalese is probably going to be easier, and I can just tear it off as it's already falling apart on me. Now we got two eyes and we got two spinaleses. This one has a little bit more of a fat cap, but it also still has that silver skin. So that means we're automatically losing that fat cap. If we don't do that, then we're not going to have a tender, enjoyable rib cap steak. And you might think, wow, what a waste, all that fat. Fat is flavor, PitmasterX. Well, you're right, but we don't want the fat that doesn't render down and makes our steak tough. Because without, our rib cap steak just makes so much more sense. All we need to do now is just put the two together and start rolling it up. Twist it like that, and that is how you make the rib cap steak. Of course, we need to connect the two. I'll be using some butcher twine to tie the two together. Difficult knots are not required. Skills and technique are overrated. There we go. Anyone can do it themselves. And for good looks, I'm gonna flatten it so that we have an even cooking surface. And now we have our both two steaks. We've got our beautiful rib cap steak that we just created. And then we have the eye of our rib, which now looks more like a New York strip steak than a rib eye steak. And that, to me, is a bit of a downfall to this process. And to find out, I'll be cooking both these steaks on the Napoleon Grill. I'm going to use the reverse sear method, which means I'm going to stick in a thermometer, put the steaks over indirect heat and let them slowly come up to a temperature of 52 degrees Celsius. Then I'm going to let them rest, fire up my sizzle zone, put on my Scottsburg cast iron pan, add a little bit of butter and sear it until it has a beautiful crust. Now, of course, I'm going to do this for the rib cap steak and for the eye of the rib eye. And here we have them, both steaks sitting there side by side. Should you break up your rib eye, make a rib cap steak out of it and be left with the eye? Or should you just stay with the traditional rib eye steak and do what they've always did, and then just eat it and enjoy it? Well, there's only one way to find out, and we can talk long and short about it, but I need to cut into these steaks and I need to taste them. Whoa, like butter. Look at that steak. Isn't that a beauty? Beautiful rib cap. And the eye. I must say that there is a difference if I look at the outside of the steaks, that the rib cap steak build up a thicker crust. There is more intermuscular fat on the rib cap, and that means it's going to render down better and build up that amazing crust that we love so much. But to say that the crust on the eye isn't any good is selling this steak short, because it's still a freaking good steak. I'm going to slice off a piece of the eye first. I love it. It's a perfect steak. But I'm kind of missing that little bit of fat that I love so much with the ribeye. It's kind of like the combination of all great things in a steak. Let's give that rib cap a try. It is so tender, but it's also loose in structure. You see, it's not one part, it falls apart because we bound it together. And it does make for a different eating experience. There we go. Yeah, this is what I was missing. This is the part that I missed on the eye. Yes, the rib cap is the better steak, but I'm just gonna put my opinion out there. You can agree or you can disagree, and I would love to hear what you think. Leave me a comment down below, but I'm gonna give it to the good old-fashioned ribeye. Because without the rib cap, this eye isn't as good as the full ribeye. And the rib cap is a little bit fatty, but the both combined together have superpowers. I can always fix it. I didn't think about it. Put the two and two together. That is it, the ribeye steak.
I'll go for the rib cap.
You like it better than the good old ribeye? It's not a trick question.
It's very difficult. I like this more.
Yeah?
Yeah, rib cap wins.
No, hold on.
Hold on.
I have the last.